Hey everyone, in today's video, I want to share some of my favorite picture book read alouds for teaching students all about self-management and impulse control. Now, if you've been around, you know that I am a K-2 teacher and all my videos are geared towards kindergarten, first and second grade. So it is important to think about impulse control and self-management realistically. A lot of these behaviors that your students will have are going to be completely normal, 5 to 7 year old behaviors. We've also had 2 years of a pandemic where students may have been inside more or didn't have as much peer interaction as usual. So a lot of these, different behaviors and ability to self-regulate might not be what they used to be, or at least what you're used to. And of course, there's also going to be some students who have these behaviors, whether it's not keeping our hands to ourselves, or controlling their voice levels, or being extra jittery and moving around for all sorts of reasons that are out of their control. While those type of behaviors are going to be normal and expected, it's also important to give students tools and resources to help try to, control their emotions when possible, even just being able to recognize their emotions or how their actions may affect others. All those different types of skills. And that is why I love using picture books to teach about social emotional topics like these. With the picture book, we really let students connect with the characters or the experience that's happening in the story, and we can talk about different tactics and ways to approach these situations in a safe space, because we're talking about a character and we're not necessarily talking about ourselves just yet, or another classmate just yet for that matter. Within impulse control and self-management, we will have things like controlling our voice level or not interrupting and talking out whenever, it might not be your turn. We can talk about things like extra movement, all the wiggles and jiggles, and keeping our hands to ourselves. There are a ton of different books out there that teach all these different specific skills, so I wanted to round up some of my favorites. Now, I probably could have made a much longer list, and in fact, after I share mine, I want you to go ahead and share any of your favorites for teaching this skill down in the comments below. But I rounded up 7 of my favorite that I wanted to share with you. I'm just going to go a tiny bit into each one. I think you like my videos, but you don't need to hear me talk for that long. So I'm going to share the topic of the book and why I like it with K-2 students. If you are ready to hear these suggestions, give this video a like, subscribe to my channel, and let's get started. The first 2 books I'm going to share together because they are by the same author, and that is Julia Cook. She is the author of a bunch of great children's books, and I have ants in my pants, and My Mouth is a Volcano, both for 2 different topics. My Mouth is a Volcano is teaching students about, not interrupting and not always just talking over others, maybe waiting our turn. And Ants in the Pants is about being a little too wiggly, either on the rug or in line, so much so where you are, really invading other people's space and even possibly hurting others. In My Mouth is a Volcano, it walks through the story of a little boy who, just has something to say. He gets so excited and his words begin to wiggle, and then they do a jiggle, and he just needs to shout out everything he is thinking. But just like with many of these books, you can also see how, yes, he might feel better that his words got to, come out of his mouth, but interrupting others and talking over people doesn't help others feel very good. In the book, the little boy ends up getting interrupted himself, and he sees how that feels. The strategy his mom teaches him in this story is to go ahead and when those words are about to come right out of your mouth, take a deep breath, push your words down back in through your nose, and then when it's your turn, you can take a deep breath and breathe them out of your mouth. I also like at the end of this book, she touches upon how sometimes if you really do need to shout out or share something quickly and urgently, that maybe there's an emergency. And if you're just kind of shouting out all the time, it's hard to decipher between what's a real emergency and what is you just talking. In Ants in My Pants, Lewis is a little boy who has trouble kind of staying still. Now, I always have iffy feelings about whether kids need to be completely still, and I like that this book shares different strategies for getting your wiggles out. You can dance. You might have students that might have one of those little cushions that they sit on with little spikes where they can move around. And the important part here isn't that kids need to sit still and just be quiet. It's that they have to be able to move around in appropriate ways. So if you are on accident kicking people or bumping into people, we can't be doing that. You need your own little personal space bubble. This book also brings up little fidgets that students in your class might even be familiar with, where they might have a classmate or two who have little fidgets in their hands and they're playing with them because they're just getting their wriggles out and they don't want to bother others. So not only does it give you strategies for the students who may need help with ants in their pants, but it also helps students recognize that other kids might be doing that as well, and they're using these strategies so they don't invade your personal space. The next book I love for this, and this one teaches mostly about general impulse control, is Clark the Shark by Bruce Hale, and it is about a shark named Clark who loves school. What I love about this book too is that it really just shows how much Clark the Shark loves school and loves his friends. He loves lunchtime. He loves playing. All of this, all of these actions that might come across as too much for other people really come from a good place. And Clark has a hard time understanding why his friends maybe don't want to play with him because sometimes he plays too hard. And he's just like, but I don't get it. Life is just so exciting. I'm having just so much fun. Clark might push a little too hard on the swings, or he might get so hungry that he ends up eating all his other friends' lunches. He just doesn't control his impulses. The teachers in the story try to remind him to kind of play it cool and kind of temper back those, that excitement that he has a little bit. And to do so, he ends up making little rhymes that help him. Like when teacher's talking, don't go walking. It reminds him not to just get up and get out of his seat and to really kind of keep himself in check when playing with his friends. I also like this book because at the end there's a new character, Sid the squid, who comes in and seems to be having some of those same troubles that Clark the shark was having, but Clark the shark can now share his strategies with Sid so they can all play together as classmates. This book is such a cute one, and it really just emphasizes that, there's a time and a place for everything. And when he's at home, he can be a shark, he can eat all the food, he can play rough with his family because that's what they might do. But at school, he does have to kind of play it cool, as they say, because at school isn't really the place to eat your classmates' lunch, that was theirs, or play too rough with them. They're not sharks, you might hurt them. And again, just recognize that there's a time and place for everything. Also, I like this one too because it teaches you that being Clark the Shark is great. That's you. We don't want you to not be yourself, but you do have to kind of change your behavior based on the situations that you're in. In a very similar fashion to Clark the Shark, we have We Don't Eat Our Classmates by Ryan T. Higgins. This one is also all about, changing our behavior based on the setting that we're in. This story is about Penelope, and she is a dinosaur who ends up going to school with all her other classmates. But when she gets there, she realizes that her classmates are not dinosaurs, they are children. And what does Penelope want to do? She wants to eat the children. But she realizes very quickly that's not going to make her any friends. And even though she has this impulse and she gets hungry and wants to eat them, she really tries her hardest to not eat them. Because naturally the other children don't like that. And guess what? Penelope wants to be friends with the other children. Again, this one is really cute. It's probably geared toward the younger kids, maybe kindergarten. But similar to Clark the Shark, it teaches about impulse control and not doing something just because you want to, but instead thinking about how it may affect others. Okay, so we talked about blurting out or interrupting others. We talked about wiggles and jiggles, ants in our pants, and then we had 2 other books for teaching about general impulse control. The next 2 I wanted to share are specifically for invading personal space and maybe keeping our hands to ourselves. The first one is called Hands Off Harry, and this one is by Rosemary Wells. This story is about a little alligator named Harry who's having some trouble keeping his hands to himself. He always seems to be poking others or shaking someone or surprising someone, and he's just keeping his hands on people who don't want their hands on him. Sometimes he would just grab things out of people's hands, and guess what? His classmates didn't enjoy that. They didn't want to be around Harry when he was doing that to them. So in this story, he learns that his hands can also be helpful. He has opportunities in the book to be a playground monitor, and he can actually help others instead of hurting others. I like this book too because not only are we encouraging people not to put our hands on others, but we can also talk about what personal space means to us and how we feel if someone invades our personal space. So we can kind of touch upon both sides. The next one about personal space is called Harrison P. Spader personal space invader. And this story is by Christiane Jones. This is a story about a hippo named Harrison who, a lot like Clark the shark, just, loves everybody. He sits a little too close. He gets a little too excited. He shakes your hand for too long or high fives too hard. He gets too close. He doesn't have any sort of understanding of other people's personal space. And we actually learn in the story that's because at his home, they all don't have those boundaries of personal space. They all enjoy being on top of one another. But his family teaches him, hey, Harrison, you can do that at home, but at school, other people need some space. So you can put your arms out front, then out real wide. Now place your arms back by your side. And by doing this, he creates his own little bubble here where if he's not too close to people, then they can all enjoy each other's company. He has to practice this a little bit, but by the end of the story, he recognizes how much more fun he and his friends can have when he gives them their personal space. This is a great one because it does talk about restraint and how it took him a little bit to get this rule. And sometimes, sometimes you're gonna make mistakes and sometimes you might invade somebody's personal space again, but he's still learning and still trying to do his best. All right, and the last book I wanted to share is this one right here. This is a classic by Kevin Henkes, Lily's Purple Plastic Purse. In this story, Lily is a little mouse who absolutely loves school. She loves her teacher, Mr. Slinger, and she wants to be a teacher when she grows up. It talks about one day where she brings something very special to school. She brings her new purple plastic purse, and it's filled with little things inside, and she just cannot wait to share it with her classmates. Mr. Slinger has to remind her, now wait a second, we're listening to a story, we need to listen to our classmates, but Lily really just wanted to share it. And so instead of waiting her turn or being respectful, she just stands up, shows everybody what's inside, and instead of others being excited, Mr. Slinger wasn't so happy. She did have a consequence and had to give everything over to Mr. Slinger to hold for the rest of the day. And Lily was not happy. At first, she seemed a little sad, but then she got angry. She got angry that he took it away. She got so angry that she actually wrote a really mean note about her teacher. When she finally got her stuff back and started walking home, she opened up the purse to see that Mr. Slinger had written her a nice note. It said, today was a difficult day, but tomorrow will be better. And he also put a small bag of tasty snacks in there. This, of course, made Lily feel horrible about what she had said in the note that she wrote to Mr. Slinger. So that night, she wrote a big apology letter, she wrote him a new picture, and when she finally got to school, she hoped that he would forgive her. Of course, he ended up forgiving her, and she got to spend her share time sharing the purple purse like she originally had wanted to, but this time she did it during an appropriate part of school. Now, I love this book because it teaches all about impulse control. Plenty of times your students are going to really want to do something. An adult is probably going to tell them no from time to time. And I don't know about you, I'm not saying this has ever happened before, but either as a parent or as a teacher, sometimes some of your students, even though you tell them no, might still do something anyway. This book is great because it still talks about consequences of doing that and also the consequences of maybe sharing words that we felt when we were angry and how that might hurt someone else's feelings as well. So it kind of goes into that little impulse control too. When she writes him that note, she writes down something because she's feeling really angry at him and she leaves it in his little backpack, and then later on she's like, oh, I didn't really mean that. I was just feeling really angry at that time. So there you have another great one. Whew. Okay, so there were 7 different books for teaching all about self-management and impulse control. And like I said at the beginning of this video, there's so many more. I'm literally thinking of like 3 off the top of my head that we could add to this list. So I would love to know from you. First, if any of these books were new to you or look exciting to you, please let me know down in the comments. I love sharing new book ideas and suggestions for teachers and parents. And also, if you have other books you like for teaching about self-management and impulse control, let me know down below. As always, I do hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up so I know. Make sure you are subscribed to my channel and click that bell. That way you're notified of every new video. And right now, I release new videos on Thursday and Sunday mornings. See you in the next one. Bye.